What do most Fortune 500 executives have in common? After more than 150 conversations with executives from companies like Disney, Amazon, Netflix, and Google, I've learned that sports is a common denominator. Some of our guests' athletic experiences earned them a place in their sports hall of fame, like Chick-fil-A chairman Dan Cathy. Some hung up their cleats after high school, like Delta Airlines CEO Ed Bastian, while others, like Condoleezza Rice, claim they weren't that great in their sport. But no matter their skill level, they have all told me that being a part of a team taught them leadership lessons that they still use today. In partnership with Chief Executive Magazine, I'm your host, Don Yeager, here to give you an all-access pass to genuine, authentic, fireside chat-like conversations with today's business icons so that you can create powerful change in your organization. This is Corporate Competitor Podcast. With me for today's episode is Brian Cornell, Chair and CEO of Target. Brian heads a team of more than 400,000 members across 2,000 stores. Stepping into this role that he calls his dream job in 2014 marked a significant moment in Target's history because Brian was the first CEO hired from outside the company. In the decades since, Brian's leadership style has mirrored the competitive spirit and discipline he developed as an athlete in football, basketball, baseball, and track. His commitment to fostering a strong team culture earned him the 2023 John Wooden Global Leadership Award from UCLA's Anderson School of Management, which is what brought us together today. Be sure to visit corporatecompetitorpodcast.com/notes to access my favorite quotes from today's session and a reflection question to get you thinking about applications from today's conversation.
You never forget where you came from. Some of the gifts that come along with the way I grew up or some of our other leaders have grown up is sense of humility, approachability, and great empathy. Our leader who runs the Northeast United States, he moved here as a teenager from India, didn't speak a word of English, but kept applying for a job as a cart attendant. Fast forward, and he's in one of our biggest leadership roles. He's such an inspirational leader, and people look up and say, I can do that too.
Brian, thanks for joining us.
Well, it's great to be with you today.
You know, I was fascinated to learn about your upbringing, born in Queens, raised by your mom and your grandparents. And you've shared that sports was the one thing that provided for you a level playing field. It was the one place you could go where you came from or anything else didn't matter. Can you tell us a little about the importance sports played in your young development?
For many of us, you never forget where you came from. I'll always remember the way I grew up, those early years where, there were certain disadvantages, but I quickly realized that there were actually a number of spaces where the playing field was level. In a classroom, when I worked, but certainly in sports, I always felt like it didn't matter that I didn't have a dad. Didn't matter how much money you had. If you showed up and you had the right attitude and approach and you performed, you got playing time. In a classroom, as long as you perform well and you test well and you show up every day with a great attitude, you get rewarded. I've certainly found in work, I've worked since I was a really young kid, that you did a good job, people ask you to come back. But in sports, I always found that to be the through line. I got a chance to play lots of different sports, and nobody ever asked me how much money our family had in the bank or what car you drove. They just want to make sure, can you get to practice on Tuesday night? And will you be ready to play on Friday evening? And if you did those things well, you just kept showing up.
Right.
Go back to early days of odd jobs. Not so much of it was to pay for sporting equipment I needed. I was fortunate. I had lots of great support from my grandparents. And despite my mom's medical issues that she had most of our lives, there was always food on the table. But if I wanted to play baseball, I had to find a way to come up with enough money to buy the cleats and to get a new glove. I'd always have to work to make sure I had a new basketball or a new football. If I wanted to play street hockey, I had to find a way to pay for that. So over the course of my youth, I mowed a lot of lawns. I couldn't wait for it to snow because I knew I could get out there with a shovel and make a few dollars. And I washed a lot of cars and trucks just so I had some dollars and I could invest that in the equipment I needed to be on the field and playing every day. And that's kind of how I connected those two dots early.
You've now progressed, CEO, 400,000 people who answer up to you. But the idea that you had that foundational, don't forget where you came from childhood, do you think that some CEOs, it almost feels they're unrelatable to most of those who work for them or work with them? Do you think that's been an advantage for you?
Don, I do think it's an advantage. I think it allows me to be more empathetic, more compassionate. One of the gifts I was given early in life is that gift of humility. My grandparents instilled in me the importance of education and hard work and humility. And I bring that with me each and every day across years and years of work in my career. And certainly I brought that to Target as I interact with our teams in headquarters, or I'm out in the field or in a distribution center.
You know, you played football, basketball, baseball, and you ran track. You practically had no off season, which is reflective of the world of work as well. We might get a couple of weeks of vacation here or there, but there is really no off season. Is there a memory from the field or from the track that you still think about today every once in a while? Just some moment that occurred where you learned a lesson that's been impactful to you?
I grew up in a time period where it was pretty much the norm. Now I think about just being in elementary school. At the break, you were out in a lot shooting baskets. When I got home from school, I was back out on the playground. And I've been a student and a fan of Coach Wooden since really I was a little boy. Back in the day when there was no ESPN, I mean, think about that.
Right.
I stayed in touch with sports by looking at Sports Illustrated every week. Go back to January of 1968, the game of the century. It was my first time actually ever seeing UCLA play on TV. It didn't work out so well that day, but it seemed like after that, every other week, I'm looking at the cover of Sports Illustrated, and they're featuring John Wooden and the UCLA Bruins year after year after year. And all of a sudden, CBS has the game of the week, Dick Enberg, and who played most often? Well, it's John Wooden's teams. So I grew up as a little kid with this amazing admiration for Coach Wooden and the teams that were always changing, but he was always there with the same principles. His focus on fundamentals, on those little details. He had that same approach rolling up the program at the start of every game.
Right.
So I've been just a lifelong fan. Now, I grew up in New York during, I think, the heyday of New York sports. 1969, the Knicks are winning a world championship. The Miracle Mets win. Joe Namath and the Jets win a Super Bowl. Everything seemed to click for New York sports. So it was all about sports. I grew up watching these amazing teams. Many of those teams, it was all about teamwork. When you look at great dynasties and great sports teams, that common culture component, I think, is really important.
Right. Yeah.
Very few people remember the starting lineup of the New York Mets in 1969, but they turned into a great team. Outside of Joe Namath, most people don't remember anyone else that played on that team. It was this unique combination of players who every single night somebody else stood up and made the right play, made the right shot, came together as one unit. So I just remember growing up, and it was all about teamwork. You had to come together as one team. And at Target, we win and lose when it's a one-team approach. And every function, every leader is coming together, understanding the common strategy, a set of objectives, and they play to win as one team. You need a team that has really talented players, whether you're in sports or in business. But you also need a team that has common values and embrace a common culture of care and growth and winning together. When I think about Coach Wooden, it was that culture that he created year after year that to me was so impactful. Talk about culture that brings people together, caring at Target. It's caring for each other and caring for our teams, caring for the consumer and guests we serve, caring for communities. It's connected the entire organization. And it was a driving part of our performance during the pandemic. We love to talk about growth. And I like to see top line growth, but it's how do you make sure you're also investing in team development and their growth? We have to win together. All parts of the organization working as one.
You made the transition easy for me here. I know you have great respect for the coach, an admiration we both share. Is there a favorite Wooden story that you have? I mean, from all the ones that you read and all the things, is there a Wooden legend that you think of as you build your leadership model for Target?
I always appreciate the fact that Coach Wooden never put one individual ahead of the team.
Mm.
The story that always makes me smile is the Bill Walton story. Walton coming back after a championship year. Oh, he's got a long beard. And he sits down with Coach Wooden and says, I want you to appreciate who I am and things that are important to me. And Coach, the way I look is important. As you know, Coach Wooden said, Bill, I've got enormous respect for you. And we're going to miss you this year. A few minutes later, Bill's out of the locker room. He's clean shaven. He's out on the court. That to me is such a great example of Coach Wooden never putting one individual ahead of the collective team. I never expected that this kid from Queens would actually ever go to UCLA and end up going to the Anderson program and be recognized with the Wooden Award. I've always admired his leadership approach and all of his leadership principles, just the consistency of his performance year after year after year. I think for a business leader, that's what you look for. I've been at Target for 10 years now. Boy, every year is a new start. Can you deliver consistent performance and create the right culture that transcends any one year, any one strategy or program? Business leaders, you better make sure you're creating an equitable environment with the right principles and values, and you expect everyone to live up to those.
I've sat with Coach and Bill Walton as they've talked about this over breakfast a number of times. And the best part about the story for me is that it wasn't Coach Wooden just making up a rule. He explained the logic to the players. I mean, he actually had strategy behind these rules. And it wasn't just that he was trying to make you conform. There was some piece of it that mattered. And he also took the time to explain the rule. Now, some people didn't listen, as Walton proved, but I thought that was a great leadership lesson there as well.
Well, Don, I think one of the things that he did so well is taking the time to explain the whys.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really easy to provide direction or talk about values and principles. But certainly in our Target environment, we always ask our leaders to make sure they're spending the time explaining why. Having that patience to take a step back and explain the details builds great alignment and it builds great understanding.
Right.
Now, I'll go back to 2017, which was a really important moment in our Target career. If you followed retail, you understand some of the trends. Back in 2014 and 15 and 16, there was a general belief that most of physical retail was going to go away, that everyone was going to start shopping through e-commerce and have it delivered to your home. And stores were going to be replaced by digital commerce. We spent a lot of time listening. We talked to consumers. We talked to our Target guests. We started to get all the feedback. And we started to hear that actually people still really enjoyed stores, but they had expectations for the physical experience and what it could offer. And we went to our annual financial community event and talked about a very different strategy. While everyone's closing down and moving away from physical retail, we're going to spend billions of dollars remodeling stores and building new stores and actually using our 2,000 stores across the country as digital fulfillment centers. So you could order, come to our store and pick it up, or pull into our parking lot. We call it drive up, and we'll put that order right in your trunk and really put the stores in the center of everything we did. If you wanted a brown box delivered to your home, we would pick it and prep it in the store, and then we'd work with FedEx or UPS to deliver the last mile. But people didn't quite understand why when everyone else was going left, we said, actually, we're going to go right. But we had to explain the whys and had to start with our internal team first. Here's why this is going to work. Here's what we've heard and why it's important. Here's the role you're going to play.
Mhm.
And then we took it out to investors. Now, we didn't anticipate that there would be a worldwide pandemic. And features like pick up and drive up and deliver to your home would make such a difference. But they did. And it allowed us to drive explosive growth over a short period of time. So pausing and have the patience and the discipline to explain the why makes a big difference. And we can all emulate that.
What I love about that is that the reason you were able to choose that as a pathway is you also understood your competitors. Amazon didn't have stores. So instead of saying, hey, let's try to be them, you were saying, let's try to make sure we capture and take advantage of what we have that they don't.
That was a big part of it. And again, Don, I can bring that back to some of the sports conversation. We looked at our assets. We looked at our team, where we had a competitive advantage. That's got to be our playbook. We got to play to our strengths and have the right approach from an offensive standpoint to compete in an environment where others had their own set of strengths, but we had a point of difference.
You sound like a coach, but I also know you were a coach. You actually coached some high school football.
Well, when I stopped playing competitively, I had an opportunity to coach. High school reached out to me and said, all right, we've got a couple of openings. Would you like to do that? And I knew how much I enjoyed being an athlete. I said, all right, if I can still stay on the field and find a way to give back, share some of the things that I had learned, sign me up. So I spent most of my college years at UCLA working in retail and coaching football. And for a long time now, I said, all right, what do I want to do? Do I want to go into business? Do I want to go to law school? Or do I want to get a teaching credential and teach and coach? I was really torn because I loved the time I was spending with those student athletes. I didn't realize, fast forward, today I get to coach over 400,000 team members.
Right. It's just a different kind of coaching.
It's what energizes me. It's what I enjoy doing. You know, I get to interact with so many great leaders and be part of their development. Now, I love to see the top line performance, and profit in our business is something that people measure all the time. And we look at market share, but I probably get my greatest satisfaction investing and watching our teams grow and some of the amazing stories that we have across the country.
Yeah.
Individuals that may have started like I did from a fairly disadvantaged position, and all of a sudden they grow into these amazing roles. And it happens all the time. And it's why I spend so much time with our frontline teams, because I get inspired and I love seeing the opportunities that we create as a company. We get a chance to change lives.
I think that's true in retail. I think fast food and so many of those other places. I love your story in the world of full circle moments. You winning John Wooden's Global Leadership Award had to feel like one of those moments, but you're used to those. One of your early jobs was washing Tropicana trucks. And then years later, you become president of Tropicana. So you are that inspiration, that person that if I'm on the floor at a Target, I can look at and say, do the right thing, keep doing the right thing, keep growing. Is there some advantage that's been created for you, do you believe, by having worked through all of those jobs on the way up?
You never forget where you came from.
Right.
Some of the gifts that come along with the way I grew up or some of our other leaders have grown up is sense of humility, but also approachability and great empathy. Those are so important in an organization like ours, where we have hundreds of thousands of leaders, and you can relate to them and hopefully inspire them and talk about the opportunities. Our leader who runs the Northeast United States, so think about 25% of the country, he moved here as a teenager from India out to the Bay Area, didn't speak a word of English, but kept applying for a job as a cart attendant at Target. You fast forward, and he's in one of our biggest leadership roles and has inspired so many others along the way. I was in Georgia recently. We've got a group vice president there that is an immigrant from Africa, moved to New York, ended up finally running a store, became one of our district leaders. Now he runs 70 stores in one of the most important markets in the country. He's such an inspirational leader, and people look up and say, I can do that too. I get a chance to meet people when they get their first promotion and they're running a store. Those are opportunities for others to look up and say, I can do that too. One of the things that I'm really proud of is we create an environment where people can be great leaders, but also be great spouses and parents. Half of my direct reports, our leadership team, are women, many of which have school-age children. They can be great executives, but also great moms. And in some ways, I live vicariously through their families because I know their kids who are playing hockey and baseball. I get sports updates during the course of the week, but I've really made sure they have the balance in their lives to be great executives, but also show up for hockey on Saturday night or be on the baseball diamond watching their kids play on Wednesday. It creates that environment where people say, there's a space for all of us.
You know, I love the approachability line that you've used a couple different times. Play Coach Cornell here for me. I'm a younger executive. I'm trying to climb the ladder. I'm working like a dog. Maybe give me a tip or two, something that you've done that's allowed you to continue to feel approachable, even as most of the org charts would say you're becoming less so.
Well, I'll actually take you to something I did the last couple of weeks. It was a program that I started back in 2017. We've now run this program 25 times. I call them immersion trips. It's my chance to take some of our 250 officers, 10 to 15 at a time. We spend 2 days together. We'll travel to different parts of the country, spend time in stores, in distribution centers. We'll meet with board members or shareholders, other CEOs. It's an accelerated mentorship program. It's a chance to build connection. It's a chance to teach and give them new experiences. 2 weeks ago, I took a group to Memphis, Tennessee, where we've had a long partnership with St. Jude. And they had a chance to walk the research center, but also experience the Target House, where on any given week, we house and support 100 families whose children are going through cancer treatment. It gives them an amazing sense for really the values of the company and who we are and the impact we're having.
It's pretty powerful.
And I took a group to Washington, D.C. We took them on a tour of the White House. They got a chance to meet with members of the Senate and the House, get a sense for what our government affairs team do. I had engineers, supply chain leaders, store leaders, merchants, marketers, members of finance and human resources. They had a chance to do things last week that they just don't normally do, and came away with a much greater sense for the important work we do in Washington, much more respect for the work our government affairs teams do. Those are ways for us to give back, but also they'll have certain memories and perspectives now on the business that they've never had before. I've touched so many of them. We'll do 8 of them this year.
Wow.
It'll give me a chance to touch over 100 of our officers. Many of them have done it multiple times. So they know they can always reach out to me with a question. My door is always open. And if there's any concerns about how we interact, boy, it all fades away because they realize we're all part of one team. We're all good human beings. We get to be authentic leaders when we're together. I build a connection. I think I become much more accessible. So those 8 trips will be highlights of my year, and the 25 plus trips will be highlights of my Target career.
You mentioned that you don't just take them to stores and centers and other things. You also introduce them to other CEOs. Tell me about that. I love that concept of not just feeling like this is all about Target, but we've all got something to learn.
Well, every outside speaker has a different story, some different perspectives. One of the most recent interactions with now a former CEO, still chairman. We spent time in Memphis with Fred Smith.
Oh, wow.
The founder of FedEx.
And a previous winner of the John Wooden Global Leadership Award.
Exactly. Our banners hang together. For that team to hear Fred talk about how he grew up, by the way, without a dad, going from Memphis to Yale, his time in the military, how he came up with the idea of FedEx and what he had learned about how product was moving around in supply chains, the way he's built this global organization. Fritz is a great leader, a great American, and he's a phenomenal teacher and storyteller. Just an extraordinary learning experience for them.
Yeah.
The athletic director at UCLA, Martin Giordano, was actually on stage with me when I won the Wooden Award. A few months earlier on an immersion trip, Martin was our guest. Mm-hmm. And he talked about his life story and some of the challenges he faced early on. He graduates, gets his first job. He goes off to a big athletic director convention and looks around the room and realizes he is the only Black person in the room. Mm-hmm. And wondered if I made the right choice. His mom inspired him to say, you absolutely did, and you're going to be successful. But when we congratulated him at UCLA, he reminded the group he interviewed 8 or 9 times before he got the Boston College job. Mm-hmm. And he always finished second. And he wondered, would I ever actually get the job? He's doing a spectacular job at UCLA. He's become a very close personal friend now. We talk all the time. Those are tough jobs, but he's an inspirational leader. He's great with his coaching staff. He's fabulous with the student athletes. And he inspired my target team by sharing some of his stories and his principles around how he manages all these different sports and coaches. So every time we travel, I try to find another CEO or a board member or someone who would be a great teacher and just share new stories. So they always walk away with some new learning and some experience that they're going to share with their teams, their families, their friends, saying, I got a chance to spend time with Brett Smith.
I have to tell you, these immersion trips are my big takeaway so far today. I'm like, I love that idea. And I can imagine just the effort to plan these things and to do them really well.
Well, Don, I might try to get you to sign up to be one of our outside speakers. I think the team would love to hear from you. As you know, people love sports, your rich history. So I might ask you to kind of sign up and join me for one later this year. I think the team would love to spend time with you, and I know I'd enjoy it.
Put it on the bank right now. I'm good. After decades of all these incredible leadership roles, you landed 2014, the dream job.
Well, I'd always looked at it as this iconic American brand. It had such a rich history. I had competed against Target. I had been a partner from a consumer packaged goods standpoint during my years at PepsiCo. I had such respect for the company, amazing reputation as an academy company, one that just developed talent. So when I was asked to be the first outside CEO to come to Target, it was a unique moment in my career. And I joined during a challenging window in time, recovering from the data breach. But what I found when I joined was just this amazing team and this really unique culture. And in those early years, people kept talking to me about, why do I stay? Well, I stayed because of the culture. And I stayed because of the team and the people. Mm. Just prior to the pandemic, we said, all right, we need to make sure we've got some common language in place. And we did a lot of listening. My HR partner, Melissa Kramer, led town hall sessions and small group sessions. And our team started to articulate how they define the culture. Mm. We kept hearing culture of care and growth and winning together. That commitment to culture and that common language was a through line to our performance, but it really was a galvanizing principle for the entire organization.
You didn't declare, here's the culture. You let that bubble up. You listened to what the team was saying through these meetings. It was defined by them, not for them.
Well, it's really important, particularly as you move into broader leadership roles, to be a great listener. I literally have a principle I wake up to every morning saying, I'm going to ask more questions than make statements. Mm. By being curious, asking good questions, and really intensely listening, get different perspectives and make sure you're a good student of the consumer, your own team, your own leadership, and apply the learning.
I love that. So one of the other things we've learned from a number of the CEOs we've had on this podcast is that there are seasons, and sometimes they're good, sometimes they're bad, and you just got to navigate and move one to the next. There's been a couple of tough seasons for you in your leadership. What advice would you give to other leaders who have to shift gears, navigate as you have in your time as leader?
Don, I might turn back to some lessons learned from Coach Wooden, who, as you know, in the early years of his career at UCLA, there weren't a lot of banners going up on the walls.
Right. People wanted to fire him.
But many times it's like, all right, should he still be in that role? And even during those amazing years, there were a couple of tough years and some tough losses. You've got to remain consistent during good times or bad times. You've got to show up as a consistent, authentic leader and be yourself. You've got to show calm and composure, but you've also got to provide clear direction, clear priorities. You've got to try to simplify things and eliminate complexity. Stay true to your purpose and your culture and the values that guide you each and every day. We've certainly done that at Target. And we've talked a lot recently to the team about the fact that there's some great learning from the last couple of years. We were saying initially, it's now go time again at Target. We've now said it's really grow time. It's time to get back to playing offense, doing the things that we do really well, leveraging our capabilities and our point of difference, and most importantly, leveraging our iconic brand and the amazing team that we have. That clarity of direction during times like this, giving people a North Star, understanding what we're going to do and how we're going to get back on track. That's a message that we've been cascading for months now. And you start to feel the momentum grow again as people have greater confidence. And importantly, they understand the whys. What are we doing that's going to make a difference? Why have we made certain decisions? And why is that going to be the right thing for the team, our guests, our shareholders? How's that going to separate us from our competition? It's putting all those components together during good years and during challenging years.
I've read a number of interviews with you where you talk about retail fundamentals, the shoes and socks moments of little details are handled consistently. Talk to me about how important that is as you navigate these different seasons.
It's one of those great intersections between business and sports. Fundamentals are so important. And when we think about retail fundamentals, it's making sure that we're reliable, which in our business is code for when you shop either online or in our store, what you're shopping for is going to be available. We've got to make sure in an environment like we're operating in today, we've got great affordability. We're offering great value, and you feel like you can shop at Target for all the different needs your family has. We've got to make sure we provide a great guest experience. And we leverage our capabilities in our 2,000 stores. Proximity matters. So fundamentals are really important. And you know how important it is in sports. Whether you have Tom Brady as your quarterback or Patrick Mahomes, you need a great offensive line that can block for them.
Right.
You can run great plays in basketball, but if you're not playing defense, if you don't block out and rebound, just because you've got a 40-point score on your team doesn't mean you're going to win the game.
Yeah.
Yes, every once in a while you want that big home run play, but it's got to be in combination of great fundamentals each and every day and everyone understanding on the team their role and their contribution.
You also talk a lot about the importance of having a roadmap, and you as the leader having to make sure that the team understands not just the roadmap, but as you pointed out, the why behind the roadmap. Talk to me a little bit about that.
Well, think about a roadmap in business like a game plan in sports. You've got to make sure there's enough clarity and simplicity that people know, all right, here's the plays we're going to run. And here's why we're going to be successful and the role you have to play. So the team needs to understand what are the things you're going to focus in on? What's going to be the point of difference for us? What's going to make us successful? What should you expect? What are things we're going to do to make sure we design a destination where people find these unique discovery items to target? How do we make sure we delight you with our brands, our partnerships, the things that are unique to us? How do we make sure we deliver great performance for our guests each and every day? You've got to do it in a way that's really simplified.
Right.
It's got to be memorable. It's got to be repeatable. People got to walk away and say, I got that. It feels like our brand. I understand what we're going to do and why. And I can tell 10 other team members exactly the direction we're headed. For all business leaders, I'm sure every time you talk to a different CEO, they're talking about the importance of their strategy and the clarity of it. and making sure they can cascade that down through the organization. We got to connect it all the way through 400,000 team members across every store, every distribution center, our offices around the globe. I want everyone to say, hey, here's Target's roadmap for growth. We know exactly where we're going.
Yeah, that is one of the great challenges. Sometimes those roadmaps get stuck in the executive office suite and everybody sits around and goes, why are we not doing this? Well, it's because they didn't get articulated down. You have 6 generations of consumers in the marketplace right now. How do you sell to all of them in one store? How do you build a retail space that's good for everybody from the greatest generation to the alphas?
You've got to be asking really good questions,
Mm.
be a good listener, find the things that are through lines that no matter where you sit, what part of the country you're in, what generation, there's going to be demand for those items. There's consistency. We do a lot of consumer research almost every week internally. We've got some great external partners that provide us perspectives and data and insights. So it's how do you correlate all that information and then distill it down to something that is digestible and understandable and actionable? We've got lots of different ways to access data, but part of the magic is how do you simplify it in a way that's manageable, where you can pull out the through lines that are really important and you can build a plan.
Coach Cornell, I am honored that today you allowed us to spend this time with you learning and becoming better corporate competitors together. Thank you so much.
I've enjoyed our time together, and I'm hopeful you and I can spend some more time together with part of our team.
I'm there in a heartbeat. I appreciate you very much, sir.
This has been great. Thank you so much. Really enjoyed our time together.
Wow. What a great conversation. I was fascinated by 4 things. The first was those immersion trips. What a great idea. How difficult is that to take 16 days of your CEO year to go travel with your team from all different levels to try to understand what's happening in the business, but also to learn about what the journey is like out in the world of business today. And the idea that they structure those trips so intently is fascinating to me. Great lesson, one I will apply, I promise you. Secondly, I was really taken by that idea that in 2017, when the world of retail had kind of gone into a shift and everybody was saying that brick and mortar was dead, while the rest of the world was turning left and closing down stores, they went right. And they decided to look at their stores as digital fulfillment centers. They used their brick and mortar stores as an asset, but that required that he provide context to the entire organization, explain the details of what they were going to do. That's something he learned from Coach John Wooden. I love that idea that you don't just tell them this is what you're going to do. You have to give the world its why. Matters more today than ever. Third, I really loved his discussion around common language. It wasn't CEO driven. He didn't tell them, here are the words that are going to matter in our organization. He let those words bubble up. As a result, the culture and the words were defined by the team, not for them. When they're designed by the team, they actually stick. They become far more invested within the organization. And then finally, I love the roadmap for growth. And the way that that came out of this creation of that common language, this idea that it's not go time, it's grow time. And here's what we're going to do. And here's how we're going to go at it. He wanted to make sure that that roadmap was simple, it was repeatable, and that everyone understanding the roadmap would be able to understand why they were doing what they were being asked to do, not just what they were being asked to do. Communication is so central to everything that Brian talked about today. I can only imagine how much fun it would be to be coached by Brian. Today, I certainly feel like I was. I hope you do too. Thank you for being a corporate competitor with me. Before we sign off, is there someone you would love to learn from as a guest on this show? Send me a LinkedIn message with your guest suggestion. It is even better if you're connected with them in some way. We'll do that interview. We'll learn from them, and we'll share the answers with you. Catch new episodes every Wednesday. Subscribe at corporatecompetitorpodcast.com to be the first to get a chance to listen. And as a thank you gift, I will send you a chapter from one of my best-selling books. Stay connected with me on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. My handle is @Don Yeager, Yaeger. And until next week, I appreciate you.